All right, thanks for tuning in to another edition of the OFN Today as we talk Atlanta Falcons football with Kevin Knight. He is with the Falcoholic at SB Nation. He's been with us for the last few years, and he's with us again. So, Kevin, I'm glad we haven't gotten rid of you because this is a good time to talk to you. I mean,
Yeah.
as a Jet fan and a Falcon fan, and we're kind of in this together. This is when we dominate the spotlight in the NFL, unfortunately, but hopefully it won't go on much longer. But still, it's going to be a very exciting offseason for the Atlanta Falcons. A new coach, a new GM, the fourth overall pick in the draft. So there's a lot of cool stuff happening.
Yeah. It's this picking this high is never something that you want, but it definitely makes the offseason more exciting. People are more engaged with it. The Falcons, 2018, 2019, just kind of languishing with that like 16th pick. It wasn't exactly the most exciting offseason this year. Total reset, fourth overall. Is it going to be a quarterback? Is it not going to be a quarterback? Is it a trade down? Is it a trade up? Who knows? But yeah, I mean, there's endless content. So, us content creators are very excited about it. Hopefully it's the only time in the top five, in near history and near future, but we can enjoy it at this point because we've already suffered. So now we might as well just enjoy it.
All right. So again, the Falcons will have 6 picks in the draft. They're also going to have 3 comp picks, right? You think?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All
3
right.
comp picks.
And, what is the top? They're going to be 2 in the 5th?
Yeah. So it'll be 2, 5th rounders and then 1 6th rounder was the most recent projection.
Cap space is pretty bad. So
it's not great. Yeah.
No. And the contracts of Ryan, Jones, and Fowler are pretty set, right? There's no way, even if the team wanted to do anything with those guys, that it's advisable. Those 3 players are going to be on the roster in 21, correct?
So Ryan and Julio, it's been kind of a fight to convince people that, they can't cut Ryan, they can't cut Julio, and they can't. Trades may be possible, but also the team would be eating historic amounts of dead cap to do that. So, I mean, I don't think it's particularly likely that either are going anywhere this year. 2022, completely different story. Restructuring is totally on the table, however, for one or both of them. But with Dante Fowler, they could get out of his contract, and they might, because if they make him a post-June 1st cut, they can save $8 million of his $18 million cap hit. So they won't get the majority of that savings. They'd only get, I think, $3.2 million immediately. But if they make him a post-June 1st, they get another, $5 million after June 1st. So that's a possibility. If they do that, they have literally no one under contract at edge. So that's, another problem that we need solving. But it really just depends on what the new coaching staff thinks of him. And $18 million for a guy who got you 3 sacks, I wouldn't be surprised if they say no to that. So
and can't stop the run.
Well, yeah.
Well, we knew that going in. But
yeah,
that's why you better have double-digit sacks.
Yeah, wasn't getting paid $18 million to stop the run, but it would be nice. Yeah.
Our new coaching staff. Last time we talked, it was about the old coaching staff and what could possibly happen here for an interim to become a full-time, and you were like, it's just not going to happen. It's time to move on. It's time to different direction. They got to bring in somebody that knows offense.
Mm-hmm.
How did you think once you found out at any point that this is gonna be our coach?
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because I started talking about Arthur Smith last season, and then I think in September, a fan asked me like, "Okay, who are you picking to be the head coach?" I had put you on the spot, and I was like, "All right, well, Eric Bieniemy, too obvious, right? He was the top guy." So that's no fun to just pick the top guy. So I was like, oh, I like Arthur Smith. I like his play action heavy offense. I think he's really creative, and just kind of threw that out there. And now 6 months later, he was the coach. So I got to brag about that a little bit. But I do like Arthur Smith a lot. I do think his offense is perfect for Atlanta. It's a return to more of the zone scheme attack that was so successful under Shanahan. I don't think he needs Derrick Henry. I know that was a criticism, as like, oh, well, he needs Derrick Henry to be good. But Derrick Henry wasn't Derrick Henry until Arthur Smith took over. So I think that was more of a symbiotic relationship than someone let on. But I really like his offense. I think it's the complete 180 from Dirk Cutter's scheme, which was just not creative. It was very vanilla. The route combinations were not really doing anything. And then you go to Arthur
Big
Smith,
surprise.
who's Arthur Smith is a completely different style. He used a lot of two tight end sets, the most of any in the league. A lot of deep play action, a lot of run game stuff. Emphasis on the offensive line. So I think that the Falcons offense is just automatically better with just nothing else changing. Arthur Smith coming in makes the Falcons offense a lot better.
All right. And what did you now when we talked about Dimitrov, and when you take a look at the whole, he did a pretty good job. I think the problem just was recently. Matter of fact, I was even going over the the way the team played last year and the stats and so forth, and I was going, yeah, you know what? Since the 2018, there sure seems to be a lot of high draft pick players that aren't performing very. And I wonder if that was part of the reason. Throw in the contracts, which we just talked about. Was it a combination of kind of those things, and obviously not winning? That's the tip of the iceberg.
Well, yeah, if you don't win, you're not getting anything. But honestly, like Dimitrov's entire tenure was good. Yeah. I still think he's an average GM at worst. He's gonna find work. It might not be this year. A lot of guys take a year off, but he'll be a general manager again. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked. Yeah, I mean, he's gonna get a job somewhere soon, and he deserves it. With Dimitrov, his strengths were secondary players, skill players. He drafted Matt Ryan. That buys you so much time, so much security. And like he nailed a lot of those picks, but the trenches he could not do. His offensive line record is atrocious, outside of Jake Matthews, and looks like Chris Lindstrom's good. He hasn't really hit on any guys out of like 10 picks. And that was a big reason why the Falcons offensive line was a disaster in 2013 and was a disaster at various other times throughout his tenure. And then pass rush. He couldn't draft pass rushers and he couldn't sign them. And those two issues were what plagued the Falcons throughout his tenure. They were still competitive most years. They were obviously competitive enough for a Super Bowl in 2016. His roster didn't have anything to do with them losing that game. It just his strengths and weaknesses were clearly defined, and I think that he got too comfortable here. I think he really needed someone to complement his weaknesses, someone that would be able to evaluate those positions that he struggled with more effectively. And I just don't think he felt like he needed to do that. I think after Scott Pioli left, there wasn't anyone really that could challenge him or was willing to challenge him. And that led to the demise of the team as we know it. And it spiraled down from there. And, I'm sure he's going to find a new job somewhere else. I'm sure he's got more years as a GM in front of him. Hopefully he can learn from his shortcomings here in Atlanta. But now we've got a completely, new GM who doesn't have any experience as an actual GM, obviously does have some personnel experience in Terry Fontenot, but, we're going to see, because this is a drastic new direction now for the Falcons.
Well, tell us, what do we know about the new GM?
He's awesome. He's really cool.
He's awesome.
He's really cool. Yeah, I mean, he's the type of guy you'd love to have a beer with.
Okay.
He's just really personable. His press conferences, he had his kids come out in Falcons gear and all that, and he knew how to butter us up, after being a Saints executive for a while. He just completely, show he was all in on the Falcons. But yeah, I mean, in terms of a talent evaluator, obviously we have the Saints free agent record to look at. He was one of their main free agency evaluators, one of their main guy doing that. He had a hand in the draft as well. And, if you had to pick, as much as it pains me as a Falcons fan, if you had to pick a team to emulate in terms of their free agency and draft strategy, it would be New Orleans. Maybe the Ravens are up there too, but the Saints were consistently competitive, were consistently able to dig themselves out of what seemed like insurmountable cap situations. He brings some of that with him, which could be valuable this year, as you mentioned, with the bad salary cap situation.
Yeah. What about, even though he's never had this position before, can you, and I would assume you bring in a guy in, you're bringing him in because you're going to have some sort of a likeness to what the new head coach wants to do. So
Yeah.
do you kind of just go with that and say, okay, I know what Arthur Smith wants to do, and I kind of understand what they did in New Orleans, even though New Orleans maybe a little bit different the way they ran things offensively. So, and the defense is a completely different story. So how do you go into it trying to guess how this GM is going to run the draft and free agency?
Yeah, he hasn't revealed anything. He's very savvy with that, not surprising. But he and Arthur Smith both preached adaptability, and that the main thing for them was they're going to go out and get the best players, and then they're going to craft a scheme and a system to take advantage of them. And even though both of these guys are new, a new head coach, a new general manager, neither one has a lot of experience at those spots. They went out and hired and surrounded themselves with a mix of experience and also more, up and comers. Fontenot added Kyle Smith from Washington, a very experienced personnel and draft guy, to kind of help him adjust to the role. They kept on the Falcons director of college scouting, Anthony Robinson, I believe. He was retained I think he was retained. At least he was retained at some point. Maybe that's changed, but I think he's still here. And on the football, coaching side, they brought in Dean Pease. Arthur Smith convinced him to come out of retirement, one of the NFL's most experienced, respected defensive coaches, to come to Atlanta to help Arthur Smith get his bearings. They have a new special teams coordinator. This will be his first time doing it, but then they went out and hired Marquise Williams. This is his first stint as a special teams coordinator. And then they went out and hired, I'm blanking out on his name, but he was, I think, an 8-time NFL special teams coordinator to be his top assistant. So, they've got a mix in here of newer faces and experience that I think is going to help them maybe bring some new ideas to the table, but also have that backbone of guys that have been there, done that they can rely upon if they get a little bit lost. But we don't really know. I mean, they've preached best player available. They won't commit in terms of anything to Matt Ryan. Which is not surprising.
Don't they always probably say that, best player available?
They always say that, yeah. But yeah, I mean, with Ryan, like he's not going anywhere this year. It's not really advantageous to do so, but they're going to make it as confusing as possible, because if they want a quarterback at 4, they want teams to think that they're keeping Ryan. If they want to trade out of 4, they want teams to think that they're taking a quarterback at 4. Sure. So they need to keep it as vague as possible to make that pick valuable. But if I had to put money on it, I'd say they're taking a quarterback at 4 or trading down. I don't think they're taking a player at 4 that's not a quarterback.
Interesting. So you don't think that, because what is that, because you believe and they believe that Matt Ryan doesn't really have much time left?
It's not even that it's really like, it doesn't have anything to do with Matt Ryan other than where he is in his career in terms of age and his contract situation. I think Matt Ryan's probably got 3 to 4 years left. So it's not that you have to draft his replacement now, that he's falling off or anything like that. I think it's more that you have an opportunity now with where Ryan's at in his contract that you can keep him for 1 more year, hope that he's really good. And then if you decide that you want a rookie, that you can let that rookie learn and adapt for a year, kind of like Patrick Mahomes did in Kansas City. Let that guy, it's a lost art that you let a quarterback actually just sit and adapt.
It doesn't happen very often. No,
yes,
especially in the top 5 of the draft. If you draft a quarterback in the top 5, that guy is starting year 1 at some point, if not week 1. So that would be. I'm not saying it can't happen.
No, it would be bucking the trends, right? Yeah. And I think that it would be smart. I don't think you need to force somebody on the field when you have Matt Ryan. The best case scenario in that would be that you get your guy, Justin Fields or Trey Lance. I'm definitely a big fan of both of those guys. Obviously, Zach Wilson would be fine too, but it seems like he's going to the Jets. So,
oh really?
That's my guess. Yeah, that's my guess.
All right, but I wouldn't mind that.
No, yeah, I think the Jets are pretty high on him. And I think he's a good fit for what they want to do. I think, Atlanta with Arthur Smith, they're looking for that more dual threat. Zach Wilson obviously has some running ability, clearly, but not to the Justin Fields, Trey Lance kind of crazy heights. But I think Arthur Smith would love that dual threat type of player for his offense. He made it work with Ryan Tannehill, who in his prime, was a good athlete, but in his 30s now, not necessarily that great, but he made it work. So having a player that can really punish the defense with his legs gives him a lot of flexibility. But best case scenario, you get a guy like Fields, like Lance, who you can let develop for a year, let adjust.
And then Lance makes a lot of sense in that department because
he does.
I can definitely see if Trey Lance was drafted, which he's probably going to be, of course, a top 10 pick. So he gets drafted in the top 10. He is the perfect quarterback to buck the trend of sitting a year because not just the level, but if you just take a look at all the tape from the kid, he doesn't have a lot of experience throwing the football. He just doesn't. He's a dynamic athlete. He obviously looks like he has what you're looking for as far as the passing game, but not compared to the amount of repetitions that the other kids have had, Fields and Wilson and so forth, passing at the highest level. So yeah, I think if there's a quarterback that could sit and be drafted in the top 10 for a year, it would be Trey Lance.
Yeah, and I would love it. Trey Lance, I like Trey Lance more than most. I would have Trey Lance ahead of Zach Wilson for me. But I mean, I'm separating these guys by a hair. So sure. It's like when I say, oh, I've got Justin Fields 2, Trey Lance 3, Zach Wilson 4. It's like they're all top 5 picks. So not a big difference there. But just Trey Lance's ceiling and what he's shown, his arm is special. He does have incredible touch and incredible accuracy. But yeah, he doesn't have a lot of reps. And he's played against FCS competition. So, he needs time, certainly. He's not a guy I would love to throw onto the field and just say, okay, go for it. But it would be perfect to put him behind Matt Ryan, who is a great teacher, someone who's not going to be hostile to his young quarterback. And best case scenario, Ryan has a great season. The Falcons are in the playoffs. And then in 2022, if you're confident in where Lance is at, you could get premium picks for Matt Ryan coming off a playoff season. Ryan will be 37 then with a very affordable contract for 2022 and 2023 with very little guaranteed money for whoever's trading for him. So, I think you could flip Ryan for a first in 2022 if he has a good season for, similar to a Phillip Rivers, except, you don't have to compete for him on the free agency market. So we'll see. It wouldn't shock me at all if they also just decide look, Ryan's probably going to be good for 3-4 years. At 4, we can trade down and pick up premium resources. We can pick up a future first. We can pick up extra day 2 picks, and we can just load up and try to compete right now. And then we'll just reset things after Ryan's contract expires in 2023, and we'll go from there with a new starter. That wouldn't surprise me either. I just don't think they're going to stay at 4 and not take a quarterback. If they're staying at 4, it needs to be a quarterback, or they just need to get out of there because someone wants a quarterback at 4, even if it's not the Falcons.
Yeah, that's the thing. Absolutely. And I look at all 3 of those quarterbacks behind Trevor Lawrence, and I say, you know what? They all could be good. They all could be really good, but we just don't know. That's the thing about drafting these quarterbacks that early. That's why you get so many hits and misses early, because the GMs are so desperate to have a quarterback that they draft these guys earlier than they're supposed to be drafted. Because really, if you think about it, if Wilson, Lance, and Fields go in the top 6 or 7, and the other players slip outside that, I'm telling you, I just know for a fact the guys who slip behind them talent-wise are just better prospects right now than those quarterbacks, because we just don't know. But hey, you know what? Whether it's a Chase or some of these other really dynamic players who might wind up getting bypassed because you're desperate for a quarterback, they move down the line, and then you wind up getting teams, like you said, that want to trade up. Hey, I need to get that quarterback. It all depends on where that starts. And it also, I think, is going to depend a lot on what happens with Deshaun Watson.
Right, that matters.
We have to figure that out. Because the Dolphins, everybody keeps saying, Denver or Carolina. Look, if Houston wants to get the best package possible, it is clearly going to be the Jets or the Dolphins. It's clearly going to be those 2 teams. How desperate are the Jets or the Dolphins to get Deshaun Watson? What are they willing to give up? Because they have the most draft capital possible and young quarterbacks on their roster too. Carolina doesn't have that. Denver doesn't have that. They can say they want him. But if they want, I tell you right now, if Watson winds up going to Denver or Carolina, that's because the Jets and the Dolphins just don't want Deshaun Watson that bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it just depends on what they're willing to give up. But like the Texans are playing hardball right now, and I don't blame them, but
Sure.
they've created this monster and they're going to have to deal with it. Like, this didn't have to happen, and it has to happen now because I don't think Deshaun's playing for them. He's got his signing bonus. Like he doesn't need to play. Like it's not like needs the money at this point.
He could play hardball, sure.
Yeah. But I guess, yeah, I mean, I think the Dolphins would make a ton of sense. We know that Watson wanted the team to also interview Robert Saleh, so the Jets could make sense too.
Yeah, so once that happens, then let's say the Jets and Dolphins don't wind up trading for, or let's say they do actually. Bottom line is that spot then becomes a little bit more, because look, the Jets could possibly say, you know what, we are going to give Sam Darnold another year. That is possible. And if they do that, then they definitely are in a position to trade down. So, and the Dolphins, if they don't get Watson, that says, well, we like Tua. And if they like Tua and they keep Tua, well, they're in a situation where they could also trade down. So I'm sure the Falcons would just love it if one of those two teams ends up with a situation where they're going to grab a quarterback or, they're going to make this Deshaun Watson deal. Because that gives the Falcons a little bit more ammunition themselves, and they're in a much better position where they could trade down. Because I think the Falcons, the Dolphins, and the Jets are all teams that would probably like to trade down, unless, like you said, the Jets want to go after Wilson.
Yeah, and I guess I mean we don't know. I guess I'd be kind of surprised if the Jets stuck with Sam Darnold. I don't know that it's fair to him to judge him on Adam Gase, but the Jets being at 2, like this is their chance to get somebody else. So we'll see. But yeah, with the Falcons, it's like I think if it got to 4 and like it was just Trey Lance left, like it was QB, and then Falcons up at 4, like they might take Trey Lance themselves, or they might. But someone's going to be desperate at that point. Like this is like. Like if Denver wants a quarterback or Philly wants a quarterback,
the more desperate they get. Yes.
Like if it's San Francisco or New England, like if Trey Lance is the last of those 4 quarterbacks available at pick 4, like we're talking about Robert Griffin III level compensation if the Falcons don't want Lance. So that could really tip things, in the trade down factor if the Falcons aren't as big of a fan of Lance, but we'll just get to see, but it's very exciting because they're, like we said, we don't know what the Jets are going to do. We don't know at all what the Dolphins are going to do. They're going to be trading out if they can, but
that's why we're going to get this Deshaun Watson deal done. The sooner we get it done, the sooner we'll know what the Jets and Dolphins, what their possibilities are. Let's just say the Falcons stay at 4 and don't go after a quarterback. All right, I know that's not what, and I understand where you're coming from because we just look, they're what 15 to 20 million under the cap. They are, or you could say over the cap actually. So they're not in a good situation there. They're one of the worst, 28th in the league. So they have some financial issues. They have the 6 picks plus the compensatory picks. I get that, but that when you are strangled by the salary cap, that means you're not going to be able to get really premium veterans. So you really have to build up on the draft, and that just makes so much sense to me that they would trade down. But no quarterback, they don't trade down. What do you think their number 1 pick would be then?
It's probably got to be Penei Sewell. Because Arthur Smith is such a proponent of the offensive line, and it's not necessarily the most ideal fit because you've got McGarry at right tackle and Matthews at left. So you're probably asking Sewell to play left guard this year. He has played a little guard in the past. I'm sure he's more than capable of doing it. Drafting a guard at 4, not ideal.
Yeah,
but
that's not what you want to do. But no, why? What's the future of the line then with McGarry and Matthews?
Like either McGarry is going to get it together this year or Sewell is going to be right tackle in 2022 is basically what it is. And possibly left tackle, in a few more years if you decide that you want to save money with Jake Matthews. Jake Matthews is still pretty young, so it's not like you need to move on from him, and he's been above average at worst. But yeah, I mean, it would be more like okay, McGarry, like you get it together, or Sewell's our right tackle.
What about pass rusher?
I just don't think there's anybody worth 4. I like Kwity Paye if they traded down to like 8 or 9. If they ended up later, maybe Gregory Rousseau, but I just don't think there's any pass rushers really worthy of a top 5 pick. It would just be kind of a need reach. The other names I've seen floated would be like Kyle Pitts, which also not great value, but I think people are making the argument that he's like the best receiver period in this class.
Yeah, but four for a tight
really
end is awfully high.
Extremely spicy. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think it's probably Sewell if they stay at 4.
All right. So I tell you what, let's go down the line then. We went through quarterback. By the way, Schaub's is he already retired?
He has retired. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So let's just say again, they don't pick the quarterback in the first round. Let's say they do trade down. Does that mean then that they would still think about maybe taking a young quarterback, or we're not taking any young quarterbacks this draft, so we're going to go out and we're going to get ourselves so-and-so as a backup, or is there someone on the roster that will be the number 2 next year?
Yeah, they actually surprisingly cut the backup quarterback they had been grooming for a while under the previous staff in Benkert. Yeah. Okay. So that was a shock. So they have someone in mind, I think, that they want to bring in. I've heard buzz that it could be Deshaun Kaiser. I guess Smith liked him at some point and thinks there's maybe something they can salvage with Kaiser. Okay. But yeah, I mean, I think if they don't get one of those top 4 guys, they're not really going to be interested in Mac Jones or Kyle Trask in the second round. Mac Jones isn't making it to the second round anyway, but it could be a day 3 thing. I think Kellen Mond is someone they could look at. I know some Falcons fans like Jamie Newman. So one of those early day 3 guys could be a guy, to look at as a potential backup. But I think if they don't take a quarterback at 4, or, after a small trade down, if they say like there's only 2 quarterbacks that go, and then some team trades up for Fields at 4. I've seen scenarios where the Falcons trade down to, I don't know, 9 or something like that. And then when they get to 9, Trey Lance is still there, so that they could still take Lance maybe if they got lucky. But I think if they don't take a quarterback at 4, they're probably just waiting until a future time.
Now the running back situation, their top 2 guys are UFAs. What happened to Gurley? Because it was incredible. Last 6 games, 94 yards rushing. Yeah. And he got off to such a good start. Was it just the health-wise? His body just got tired? And is there any chance that either Gurley or Hill will be back?
I don't think so. I think with Gurley, it was just Dirk Cutter's rushing attack is kind of a joke, and teams figured it out within 6 weeks or so. Right. There wasn't really anything else to it. Okay. So it just, I think Gurley's probably still got ability as a short yardage guy. Clearly in the red zone, he was still capable, but they just don't have the money to spend on a guy who's going to be a role player. And I don't really think they're going to spend premium money on a running back anyway. It's going to be a draft thing. And this is a good class for that. Yes. They've got some potentially high end options in the second round. But like that, third, fourth round range, there's a ton of guys that could all be starters. So,
definitely
I like
you see the Falcons using one of their early picks on a running back.
Yeah. We've seen Javonte Williams in the second. I think that's more likely to happen if they trade down at some point because they're likely to have extra day 2 picks. So I think, spending an earlier one on Javonte Williams, I love Williams. I think he's a great running back. I think he just immediately be like the most talented running back they've had since like Michael Turner. So that would be a great fit if they wanted to really improve the run game. But other guys, obviously Falcons fans are obsessed with Najee Harris. The Derrick Henry comps are, a little absurd there.
Well, if you trade down a couple of times, you can build up some extra draft picks.
Right. Yeah. I don't see that happening. I think Najee's probably going to the Dolphins at 18 or something like that. So that one's probably not really going to happen. But, Trey Sermon's a name that's been floated. I like Kenneth Gainwell out of Memphis a lot. Jamar Jefferson.
Etienne is going to be pretty good.
Well, yeah. If Etienne's there, obviously Etienne. Yeah. I don't think he's making it out of the first either. So that's why I kind of.
So the fans have already been putting this Harris.
The fans have been clamoring. Some, not all. Some have been clamoring for Najee Harris at 4. So we need to calm down with that. Yeah. So people need to
Okay.
calm down on that one. Calm down, folks. But
Well, look, I will say this: is that when you take a look at the running backs that have been drafted, that in top 10, the kid definitely has really good talent. I wouldn't say he's not a top 10 pick. It's just that it all depends. When you're a team like the Falcons, I just don't think that that's the direction you go. To me, it's more of a, hey, you know what? We're lucky. We're like the Dolphins. We're on the borderline of being in the playoffs. We have some good talent. We can afford to spend an early round, a top 10 pick on a running back. I just don't see the Falcons in that spot.
No. And like, to me, it's like Harris is very good, obviously, but the difference between Harris at 4 and Javonte Williams at 35 is not enough to justify Harris at 4. Like,
correct.
I'd be, it's not that big of a difference. Like, I have Javonte ranked very highly, and I don't think Harris is giving you enough of a bonus over Williams to justify like 30 picks of draft value. Yeah. So, but they're definitely going to add a running back. The question's just when. So
okay. And Brian Hill, I mean, I can't imagine he's going to make a lot of money. So what's the deal there?
It just depends on what Arthur Smith thinks of him. I suspect he'll probably want to go elsewhere, but he could come back if he's like cheap. But
what are his issues? Because he has his running average for his career is strong. Mm-hmm. He's you see that he has a little bit of big playability in him. His numbers have increased over the last few years. So what is it? What's the knock on him?
He's played with Dirk Cutter. He's got the stink on him because honestly, like Dirk Cutter just makes every running back look mediocre. So honestly, like Brian Hill's probably going to go somewhere and be like a running back too, and have a healthy career. But I just don't know if he's what Arthur Smith is looking for. Okay. He does have some physicality and speed to him, so it wouldn't shock me if he comes back. But I suspect some other teams probably just going to be more interested. Maybe one of these teams that got some of these Falcons coaches, all 3 of the Falcons' quote unquote defensive coordinators have gone on to become defensive coordinators elsewhere. We got Dan Quinn in Dallas, Jeff Ulbrich in what?
Jets.
I can't remember. Yeah, Jets. Yeah. And then Morris as
Jets
well.
Jets can use a running back.
Yeah. So one of those guys could be calling and saying, hey, I really like Hill. So there's nothing wrong with him. I don't think he's like necessarily a starter.
No.
But as a rotational guy, absolutely, he's got talent and he should catch on somewhere.
Okay, and by the way, does this offense, are they going to be using Keith Smith?
They did occasionally do it in Tennessee. I don't think they're getting rid of him necessarily because they don't save a lot of money. And Smith was like their best special teams player. He had so many special teams tackles. It's kind of absurd. But like, is he going to be a big part of the offense? Probably not. Okay. But he could, Arthur Smith, when he came in, said like, look, what I ran in Tennessee, don't assume it's what's going to happen here because we're going to build an offense around what we have. And Keith Smith is a pretty good fullback, so they might decide, look, we want to use the fullback more. But yeah, we'll just have to see what kind of talent they bring in, and whether they try to go to more 2 tight end stuff because that was his bread and butter in Tennessee. So
okay. Speaking of tight ends, so Hurst comes over from Baltimore. The numbers were okay, but you want him to be better because Hooper actually had a much better year the year prior. So what was the final verdict talent-wise year 1 for Hurst with the Falcons?
Yeah, I think Hurst was fine. I don't think he was really utilized all that well. The offense as a whole was underutilized, so it's just all going to blend together in criticism of Dirk Cutter. But I think Hurst is fine as the tight end 1. I don't think they necessarily need to find a new starter for this year. If they don't want to pay him, they might need to find somebody else for next year. Because I don't know that we're going to see his 5th-year option picked up with how those are being fully guaranteed now. But
was there something about Hurst's game that you were disappointed in, or did you get what you thought you were getting?
Honestly, he was about what I thought he would be. I don't think they used him vertically as much as they should have. He's a more athletic tight end than Hooper. Yeah. So I think they could have unlocked a little bit more deep stuff with him. But I think he was what they should have expected. I think they're going to get more out of him and Arthur Smith, who really is an expert at using tight ends.
Sure.
So I think they're going to get more out of him this year. The only question is, like, are they going to bring in someone else to form a 2 tight end set, or is it going to be more of an 11 personnel offense here in Atlanta? Because, they have Atlanta's receivers better than Tennessee's in terms of their top 3. And tight ends maybe not as good. Tennessee had Jonnu Smith as their starter, who really came on. So we'll see what they do. I won't be surprised if they do try to add like a day 2 tight end to make a dangerous 2 tight end set. But yeah, I expect it'll be more tight ends than we saw under Dirk Cutter, but the extent of that, I'm not sure.
Yeah, because if they are going to run 2 tight ends enough, then Stocker's a free agent.
Yeah, he's not
Graham is there. He just his numbers actually seem to be a little bit down. So is Stocker type of guy that's going to be cheap enough you bring him back? Or no, this is definitely a position that the Falcons are going to upgrade at some point.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually looked into Stocker because he was in Tennessee with Arthur. No, they actually cut Luke Stocker as soon as Arthur Smith took over the offense. So, yeah, so I don't know that he's necessarily going out and going to bat for Luke Stocker.
Okay.
But there are the Falcons actually got the Eagles tight ends coach this year. So Justin Peel. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be Zach Ertz, but Richard Rodgers is a name. He actually had kind of a quietly good season for Philadelphia. And also, all the tight ends that have come through Philly, they could have an advantage in signing. So like Trey Burton had some down years, but a guy that could have some good years left.
Okay.
There was another guy too, but I can't remember his name right now. But yeah, Richard Rodgers is definitely one I would keep an eye on for the Falcons because of probably not going to be extremely expensive, but a good tight end too, someone who can play next to Hurst and a good blocker. So.
All right, so Julio Jones. So regarding his contract, how many more years does Julio Jones have with the Falcons?
Yeah, that's a tough question because it probably depends on how Julio is playing in 2022. Like if he's healthy and has another great season, they're probably not rushing to get rid of him. Because when he was healthy this year, he was still Julio. It wasn't like his game had dropped off. But, he's over 30 now, so it's always like you just don't know when receivers are going to fall off. But Julio's skill set, he's a player that could transition into a kind of a Larry Fitzgerald later in his career because he does have the size and the physicality where if he loses a step or two, that doesn't necessarily destroy his value as a receiver.
Yep.
And the Falcons have Calvin Ridley, so they have that deep threat, that guy that can kind of take the reins as the primary target if Julio does start to slow down. But it'll just depend. I don't think he's not going anywhere this year, and I guess I would be kind of surprised if he goes anywhere next year, but it just depends. So if he has a great season this year, that could make him a super valuable trade piece, or it could be that the team is like, look, he's justifying his $20 million contract. We're just going to let him ride out his deal, or we're going to extend him or whatever. So it's kind of up in the air with Julio, but I don't think he needs to worry this year.
Okay. And Russell Gage had a breakthrough season. So he was able to take advantage while Julio Jones was on the shelf. So it just seems like that is still a very good situation for the Falcons because, like you said, Jones could end up being there at least a year or two. Ridley, Gage. So you have a really strong 3, one of the better 3s in the entire league, actually. So there really doesn't seem to be much that the team, with all the other needs that they have, that this is just, just bring back Powell because he's a returner, even though he didn't have a good season as a returner. That is something that the Falcons have to do, isn't it? Is find a number 1 kick returner. That's been a sore spot for them the past couple of years.
Yeah, so they, an undrafted guy from last year, Chris Rowland, after Powell got hurt late in the year, they started giving Rowland some run. He didn't get a ton of opportunities, but that's someone who's going to compete. And their new special teams coordinator, Marquise Williams, was Detroit's main assistant, and Detroit's returner, Jamal Agnew, one of the NFL's best returners. He's a free agent, so they could very well bring in Agnew, with his connection with Marquise Williams, to take over that role. So that wouldn't surprise me. But at wide receiver, they're pretty much good. They're good. They don't need any major things. They could use some more size, because outside of Julio, Ridley's like 6'1". They don't really have a lot of guys that are big. So I think like a day 3 pick, like they have 3 5th-rounders. So I think they'll bring in because there's going to be wide receivers. Happens every year. Like good wide receivers are going to fall to the 5th round. So just pick up one of those falling wide receivers to just kind of add some high quality depth in there. And I think that's basically all they need to do.
Any of the other young kids? I know the kid from Virginia.
Yeah.
Has
Olamide.
talent. Yeah.
Yeah, he's good. Yeah, I think he's got a future with the team for sure.
Okay.
Would
he be the slot guy?
Gage is going to be the slot guy as long as Gage is there.
I mean,
but
would he be? Would that be the role that he would take over at some point, or no? He could be an outside guy.
I think he could be both. He doesn't have necessarily like great size, but he's really fast. So we'll see. He's probably best set up for the slot with his size where it is, but he did play a little bit on the outside when needed. So I think we'll see him. Like Cutter had this really weird thing this last year where he was like, we're going to have our top 3 receivers and then our 3 receivers behind them. Each one is going to be a direct backup to one of these receivers. And the only time they're going to play is if that receiver comes out of the game. So the only time we got to see Olamide Zaccheaus was if Calvin Ridley happened to miss time. And he played the Calvin Ridley role. Instead, which meant we had to watch Brandon Powell anytime that Russell Gage went out, and we had to watch, Laquan Treadwell and Christian Blake if Julio went out, instead of just putting Zaccheaus out there, who's probably better than all of those 3. So I do think we're going to see Zaccheaus used more frequently under a new staff that's not afraid to just, play the best 3 receivers you have.
He could be definitely somebody to keep an eye on. That's interesting. Okay, offensive line. So we already talked about the tackle situation. You mentioned Lindstrom, who looks like he's going to have a really good future. Carpenter, better last year, it appeared, than 19. But you could say the team could save some money if they wanted to let him go.
They probably have to let him go. It's $4 million, which they desperately need. They could make it more like 5.5 if they make him post June 1st. So he's probably gone. I mean, he was fine last year. Was not a big deal, not a problem, but they need the money. So he's probably gone, which means they have to find a new left guard. I think it could be, if they stay at 4, like people have floated Sewell. I did a mock draft recently where the Falcons traded down twice, ended up at 19, and they got like Elijah Vera Tucker there. So I think they will be looking to maybe add someone in the draft, but I think there's some interesting free agents too. I think if they do splurge on a free agent, with a big backloaded contract to make the year 1 hit as low as possible, like a Joe Tooney. I think Arthur Smith really prioritizes the offensive line, and he's tended to go for these veterans. So they could splurge on Joe Tooney to solidify that spot.
He's going to make a lot of money, though.
He's going to make a lot of money. It's going to be a lot of signing bonus, trust me. But maybe some void years tacked on too. But it could happen. But this is the Saints. Ex-Saints executive we're talking about. They've had crazy things happen. But either that or there are some cheaper guys like Quentin Spain was a guy who played with Arthur Smith for a few years in Tennessee. So Spain, not going to be expensive, a solid guy who's going to be cheaper than Carpenter, maybe $1 million or $2 million. So it's either going to be someone cheap that's like a stopgap or like a more serious addition. But if they don't solve it this year, they're probably targeting that position pretty high in 2022.
And then Hennessy just takes over at center, right?
Yeah, we're just going for the best there. So I think we saw him play more towards the end of the season, like against Kansas City and stuff like that, and he was fine. He had to step in at guard, and it wasn't as good when he was actually playing his natural position of center. He was fine. So I'm not super concerned about Hennessy. He's not going to be Alex Mack, but he's going to be fine.
And what about Mack? Do you think he plays anymore?
He could. What we were told is he was planning to retire. I mean, I think if like Kyle Shanahan makes him an offer, he might go over there because apparently those two are like best friends. But I don't think he's like itching to just randomly sign somewhere. So
yeah. All right. By the way, special teams again. So definitely they got to upgrade a kick returner.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, look, the punter that they took last year, that they brought in last year, it didn't have a good year, but he's a rookie. So what's the deal there? And then Koo has been fantastic for the couple of years he's been there. He's only missed 5 field goals in 2 years. 8 for 8, 50 plus last year. I mean, come on. When you're into one of those situations as a fan, you're like, couldn't you just save that for when we're good?
It's going to just languishing on this terrible team.
So does he? Because look, the Jets were in this situation a couple of years ago. You're not a very good team. You're rebuilding. A team comes along in Seattle and offers Myers a big deal, and you go, all right, we just not in that situation to overspend on a kicker. Seattle's trying to win a championship. We're not. That could happen to Koo, couldn't it?
It could not, because he's an exclusive rights free agent. So they will offer him the vet minimum, and he will have no choice. But next year, that is a serious concern. So,
all right, very good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Let's move on now. Oh, by the way, and the entire special teams unit just hasn't been good. So even if they didn't have a new coaching staff, they were going to probably have to do something there anyhow, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think Hofrichter was mostly fine. The coverage had its moments. The onside kick outside of Dallas was actually really good, like the onside kick recovery. It was just Dallas was a disaster. But yeah, I mean, they're going to make a lot of changes there. You know, they have a whole new staff. But in terms of like the name players, the punter and the kicker, they're going to give Hofrichter another year. And Koo's obviously sticking around, and he's probably going to get, you know, a sizable contract next year. But yeah, I mean, they're going to be replacing a lot of names there.
Okay, on defense now, this is how do you think they're going to go about things with the new staff? Because they were running basically a 4-2-5, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was the 4-3 under, but they usually play two linebackers, and you know the nickel is the base defense now. So, Pease has said very little. He said we're going to be multiple when people have asked, and that's basically what he's done. But he's a guy that's going to use more traditional 3-4 looks on base downs. He's still going to use 4-3 looks, and he's going to covet players that can move around and do a lot of different stuff. So it's not honestly that different from Quinn's 4-3 under, because that scheme also had some 3-4 looks and things like that too. But, you know, we're going to see, I think they're going to covet more like versatile edge rushers, guys that can stand up or put their hand in the dirt. And they're probably looking for like a more traditional nose tackle. They can save, you know, $2.3 million if they move on from Tyler Davison, who has been, you know, a solid guy, but he's more of a 4-3 only nose tackle. He doesn't really have that overwhelming size that you want from your traditional 3-4 guys. So those are the main things on the defensive line that I would be looking at.
Yeah, because that does make a lot of sense, like you're saying, to bring in a really big 330-pound nose.
Yeah.
And Grady Jarrett has been the one driving force for the team over the last couple of seasons, so he could play anywhere. And then it's just another year with Dante Fowler, though, right? I mean, about that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, if they make him post-June 1st, they could recoup about $8 million of his $18 million cap hit. Sure. Obviously, still not ideal because you're eating $10 million, but it's possible. But like I said, if they do that, they already cut Alan Bailey, who was their other edge defender who's under contract. They're going to bring back Jacob Tuati Mariner, who was one of their breakout guys this year, had a really awesome game, a couple games, former undrafted free agent. So he'll be back. He's an exclusive right free agent as well. So he's going to be paid the vet minimum. So he'll be somebody. Does he fit in? I like Means. I think he's one of the guys they should consider bringing back as like a low end, you know, rotational guy. But in terms of starters, like, I mean, it's going to be draft picks and bargain basement shopping. You know, we've heard Pernell McPhee from his experience with DNPs could be on the table. You know, Tyus Bowser from the Ravens also. You know, if they do splurge on, they could probably splurge on like one guy and make it work with a really backloaded contract. So we've heard Carl Lawson floated a lot as a potential splurge. Okay. But yeah, I mean, they're probably going to have to make do with not much. You know, if they trade back and get some extra picks, we could see them take multiple edge guys in the draft. So I think no matter what, there's probably an early edge pick and then maybe a later edge pick and some free agent additions as well.
And then Walker, who seemed to have a really strong rookie season. Matter of fact, all three linebackers, you know, there's talent there. Jones was healthy, so that's nice.
Yeah.
But that just that'll help the transition. Because now, basically, you just move Walker in. He gets a little bit more snaps. And that, I think, does make the transition a lot easier. Because it's not like the Falcons have so much talent in a basic 4-3 defense that, we can't make this switch. It's going to take a couple of years. No, you don't. Basically, you have Grady Jarrett, and that's it. And then and then you got three linebackers with talent. So that kind of works out, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be difficult for them to get to the 3-4 if that's what Pease wants to do, like as like the base package, because like we said, the 4-3 under is basically just a modified 3-4 anyway. And Michael Walker did play a little edge in college too, you know, in a 3-4 style defense, so he could rotate down and play some Sam. Deion Jones and Foye are basically prototypical inside linebackers in a 3-4 anyway. They can both fill that role with no problem. The interesting thing is, like, what do we do with guys like Marlon Davidson? Does he become, last year's second round pick was injured a lot. He could definitely play like a 3-4 defensive end because he's kind of one of those tweener type guys.
What's his
John
size?
Kaminsky, I think he's like, what was it, like 6'3", 290.
Oh, okay. He's got good size. Okay.
He might have bulked up a little bit, but yeah. And
Yeah.
John Kaminsky's the same way. John Kaminsky was like 6'5", 285, something like that.
Okay.
So those are both guys that could play more of that 3-4 defensive end role.
Sure.
It's really just edge. Like, it's a barren cupboard at edge. So it's going to be Dean P's special, aka we're going to be sending guys. It's going to be different guys every play, and only some of them will be edge defenders, but they're going to be sending pressure. It just might not be coming from where you'd expect it to be, and they're just going to try their best. I mean, I don't think anyone's expecting a great pass rush, but I think if Dean Pease can scheme it up, if anyone can do it, this is the most talented defensive coordinator we've had in God knows how long. So, I mean, I think people are just like, look, it's Dean Pease. We're just going to trust him. We're basically looking for this defense to be average. And if it can be average, this team is a competitor. So,
and you're talking and you were saying about breaking the bank, with a move or two. Judon is also.
Judon.
He's looking for a lot of money. I'm not so sure he's going to get what he's looking for, but you never know. So he's out there as well. So
yeah, did play a couple years with Pease as well. So that connection is valuable because guys know Dean Pease and they like him. So if they want to get in his scheme, they might have to take a discount to come to Atlanta, or they might have to take some incentives, or they might have to have a backloaded contract. But he's a name, and they're likely to get a few players because of his gravitas.
Sure.
So that is another benefit of having someone like that on staff.
And finally, in the secondary, the AJ Terrell. So you've got one corner there, but what do you have? 5, 6. Well, Allen was cut, so you have 5 other unrestricted free agents. As far as the remaining 8 that were the top guys in the secondary last year, production-wise. So there's a lot of decisions to be made in the secondary. Oliver hasn't seemed to pan out so far. It's one of those players I was talking about earlier when you're taking a look at recent draft picks. He was a second-round pick in 2018. What do you think there? Because Neal is the biggest one. He's again, he came off finally a healthy season. So do you think he'll be back?
Yeah, I mean, I love Neal, and I think it's going to be really sad to see him go because, like I said earlier, like the Falcons have 3 defensive coordinators around the league now that all absolutely love Keanu Neal. Dan Quinn in Dallas, Ulbrich and with the Jets, and then Raheem Morris elsewhere. So, like, there's going to be competition for Neal, and I don't think the Falcons can really get into any sort of bidding war with him. So he's probably going elsewhere because of that. I think if they're investing in a safety, they're probably investing into more of like a prototypical cover 2 or single field type guy. Dean Pease really likes to rotate his safeties and do a lot of robber and cover 2 and more of that interchangeable. And Neal can do a little cover 2, but he's not a single high safety. He's not someone you can rotate back there and have him cover the deep middle. So could he work in Pease defense? Absolutely. He could put him down in the box and have him do some creative stuff, but I don't think they're going to. I think so. I don't think they're going to go out of their way to get in a bidding war for Keanu Neal. Now they could go into some sort of situation where they're looking at Marcus Williams from the Saints, where they're looking at Marcus May from the Jets. I think those safeties are more in the mold that Dean Pease likes. They could be going cheap, for someone like Malik Hooker, where they're just hoping to bet on him having a bounce back year, hopefully staying healthy. But yeah, safety is another spot where they are going to be investing something, either a free agent splurge or a high pick.
Because Allen's already gone, and if Neal goes, then
they have nothing. They got Jalen Hawkins. Jalen Hawkins.
That's another who's 4th round pick, right?
Yeah, he was fine. I mean, I don't think you necessarily want to go in the year with him as your starter, but he's fine for the most part.
What about KZ? Because KZ is a good player, but he got the Achilles injury.
Yeah, I mean, if he wants, it just depends on what DPs wants. I wouldn't mind at all bringing him back on like a vet min deal just to see if he can get healthy and be a depth guy. So that wouldn't shock me, but it also wouldn't shock me if, like I said, all these Falcons coaches elsewhere that they're probably going to be more interested in re-signing some of these guys than the new staff just because of their connection. But yeah, I mean, guys like Bleedy Ray Wilson and Darqueze Dennard at corner, I would love to see those guys come back. I think those guys were absolute values. Bleedy Ray never gets the respect he deserves. He should have been starting over Isaiah Oliver and some other players this last season. But I would be totally happy to bring those guys back. I think they can be serviceable like spot starters and kind of bridge guys. But yeah, they're going to be investing in safety in the draft. I don't know exactly when, probably day 2. Guys like Andre Sisco, Trayvon Morig, Richie Grant from UCF, they're going to have one of those guys is going to be a Falcon more than likely. So,
but the cornerback situation and Sheffield's another 4th rounder from 2019 who's off to a slow start. So yeah. Oliver and Sheffield, talk about those guys.
Oliver, bit disappointing. It was a miss for me too. I had him as a 1st rounder that year, I think. So, hasn't obviously panned out as much as I have wanted. They moved him to the slot and he was playing a lot better. They kind of lessened his responsibilities a little bit, let him play the middle, let him make plays and run support because he's a bigger corner. So he's a little bit more well suited for that type of work. And he responded by playing well. So I think, he's maybe could play the slot for them. They also save $2 million if they cut him. So I wouldn't be shocked if that happens either. But he's definitely looking more positive than Kendall Sheffield, who had a very poor 2020. Sheffield is basically free in terms of cap hit, very, very little. So, it wouldn't surprise me if he sticks around just, to see what they have in him. But it's probably like they probably have to add corners somewhere. Whether that's free agency or the draft. But yeah, as you're probably gathering, there's a lot of things that they absolutely have to add. So,
which is why they have to trade down.
Yeah, that trade down's looking mighty, mighty interesting. But yeah.
All right. So then, So as far as needs, then we're talking definitely running back. We got to get in another tight end. Sure, doesn't have to be a number 1. Have to left guard. That's for sure. That's the definite on the offensive line. On defense, edge rushers, as many as you can get.
Yeah.
A nose tackle, and at least 1 corner and 2 safeties.
Yeah, so only a few things that they need.
Yeah, that's all.
Just like every position on defense except linebacker. Linebacker's good. We got linebacker on lock.
You got your fullback situation's fine.
Yeah, fullback solid. Yeah. So wide receiver also very good. So there's some things.
Before I let you go, how are the fans? How are they feeling about the offseason? All the changes and everything.
It's very popular coaching staff. You'd be really hard pressed to find people that were upset with Arthur Smith. A lot of people feel that the Falcons got the top candidates at both GM and head coach. And I think you could, depending on what you wanted. Like if you wanted a defensive coach, obviously Saleh was the top guy. If you really, I know a lot of people wanted Eric Bieniemy. I don't know what the hell's going on with him not getting hired. It's ridiculous to me. But if you're not getting Bieniemy and you're not interested in a defensive coach like Saleh, I think Arthur Smith was absolutely the top guy that ended up getting hired. So I'm super hyped. I know a lot of fans are. And then Fontenot, it's a gamble, but I think that he was their top pick. And listen to some of his press conferences and tell me you're not just like, all right, well, I'm all in on Fontenot. So okay. he's really personable. He seems like just a really nice, down to earth guy, which, is kind of a refreshing change from Dimitrov, who just felt like he was just BSing you with every word he said. So, Fontenot probably is as well, but at least he's nice about it. So.
Okay. All right. Sounds good, Kevin. And Falcoholic.com. That thing is just busting out for Falcon fans, right?
Oh, yeah. We got all the content, thefalcoholic.com, and check out our YouTube page as well. It's also on YouTube at The Falcoholic. We just had last night, which is Wednesday night, Falcons linebacker Foye Oluokun come on and talk to us. So that was a lot of fun. So if you're interested in checking that out, that just got posted there as well.
Terrific. Kevin, great job as always. I look forward to talking to you again sometime between free agency and the draft.
Yep. Thank you very much.